Welcome back to We Be Kids again. My name's Danny, I'm one of the founders at We Be Kids. I'm also an outdoor educator and a storyteller as well. If this is your first time at We Be Kids, know that over on the website we have over 250 free activities, all based around nature, nature connection, nature activities, nature art, yoga, mindfulness and storytelling. Some of our stories on the site cover all kinds of things in nature. We have stories about flowers and insects and animals and trees. And this story that I'm going to tell you today is a story about the moon. And this story is called Papa, Please Get the Moon For Me. And it's a story that is written by Eric Carle, who also wrote a very famous book that you probably know called The Very Hungry Caterpillar. Now, a long, long time ago, in a big open field at the edge of snow-topped mountains, there was a tiny little red cottage. And inside this tiny little red cottage lived a father and his daughter. And his daughter was called Monika. And one night, like most nights, the father took Monika up to bed and read her a story and tucked her in and went downstairs. But on this night, Monika just couldn't get off to sleep. And she couldn't get off to sleep because outside of her window, shining big and bright, was the full moon. She tried to ignore it, but she couldn't. It was as if it was just calling out for her. So she jumped herself out of bed, she put on her slippers, and she went over to the window. And she pulled open the curtains and she looked up at the beautiful bright moon. She noticed how perfectly round it was. And as she gazed up, she called out, "Moon, moon, please come down and play with me." But the moon didn't reply. So she called again, "Moon, moon, please come down and play with me." But again, no reply from the moon. But downstairs, her papa had heard this. He'd heard her calling out to the moon. So he went upstairs and he opened the door. And he looked. And again she called out, "Moon, moon, please come down and play with me." But the moon didn't reply. And then Monika spotted her father at the door and said, "Papa, please go and get the moon for me, so that I can play with the moon." So the papa agreed, and he went downstairs, and as he was walking out, he began to scratch his head and think, how am I possibly going to get the moon? Then he had an idea. He wandered off, and he wasn't gone for long, and when he returned, he had the longest ladder anybody had ever seen. He carried the ladder past the house, across the field and into the mountains. And when he got into the mountains, he found the tallest mountain. And he rested the great giant ladder onto the tallest mountain and he began to climb. Up, 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 up and up and up he went, up and up and up, up and up and up he went, right up through the clouds and into the sky until he arrived at the moon. And the papa said to the moon, "Moon, will you come down to earth and play with my daughter?" And the moon yawned and said, "Of course I will. Just carry me on your back and we will go down together." So the papa began to try and pick up the moon. But the moon was too heavy. The papa didn't know what to do. And the moon said, Over the next few weeks, I will get smaller and smaller and smaller. Then, when I am at my smallest, come and get me. I will be much lighter then. So the papa agreed, and he climbed down the ladder. He went down and down and down and down, down and down and down he went, until he got to the bottom. And he said to Monika, keep watching out of the window, and when the moon gets smaller, I will return. Bring the moon for you. So for the next few weeks, they watched as the moon got smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller until it was just a slither in the sky. And then the papa went back to the ladder, and he climbed and climbed and climbed and climbed and climbed and climbed, and he went up the ladder and through the clouds until he got to the moon. And now the moon was very, very small. So he picked the moon out of the sky and put it under his arm and climbed all the way back down. And when he got back down, he handed the slither of the moon to Monika. And she was so very grateful. Thank you, Papa, she said. And she skipped off with the moon. And all of that day she played with the moon. And when it came dark again, she decided to play catch with the moon. And she was swinging the moon, and she threw it and caught it, and threw it and caught it. And with the third throw, she threw it. This time the moon didn't come back. It went up and up and up and up until it disappeared. Monika was sad at this. She went back to her house and she went to bed, and she fell fast asleep. And the next day, she felt a little sad and a little glum until the night came, and she sat at her window and she watched and she looked for the moon. But it didn't return. And she kept watching. And a few nights later, a tiny slither of silver appeared. And the next night, it was bigger. And the next night, bigger and bigger and bigger, until finally the whole moon was filling the sky just like it had on that first night. And Monika looked up at the moon. She looked at its bright, round edges. She whispered, I love you. And just like magic, somewhere on the wind, the words, I love you too, came back. And that is the story of Monika and the moon. I hope you enjoyed it. At this time of year, we love to go out on little hikes after dinner, and it is getting darker later and later and later, but occasionally we see the big moon come rising up over the hills in the distance, and it's always a wonderful thing to see. So make the most of these late nights, go out on some night adventures and find new ways of seeing the world. So I hope you enjoyed that story, and we'll see you again sometime soon at We Be Kids. Bye.